Okay, welcome back. This is Ben Dowell, your friendly Inventus banking coach. I'm here with Colin Davis. He's over at Michigan State. Colin, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get to Michigan State? And what's your career goal?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Ben mentioned, my name is Colin Davis. I'm currently a sophomore at Michigan State studying finance with a minor in real estate. I'm actually from Ann Arbor, so kind of enemy territory, as that's where U of M is from. Um, I was kind of interested in moving out of Ann Arbor as I'd lived there my entire life. So Michigan State seemed like the plausible option. It's been great so far. I've been able to build a network of professionals who went to MSU and also students here now. My career goal currently is to pursue either a career in investment banking and real estate private equity, and then possibly moving out of a career and more into an entrepreneurial venture. Hopefully, starting my own firm one day. But thank you again, Ben, for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about your entrepreneurial venture. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, the entrepreneurial venture I run is called Ann Arbor Home Services. I actually started it under a different name, Ann Arbor Pressure Washing, my junior year. I was able to scale that company for about 2 years, ended up partnering with a longtime home friend named Adam Kulik. He did a landscaping company in New Hampshire while playing junior hockey. We ended up combining our business models into more of a property maintenance provider. Through that, we were able to start pairing with a few property management companies in Ann Arbor as well as realtors. We were really able to scale our client base, and with that came higher revenues. This coming summer, we're looking to kind of bolster up our crew, expand employment, and hopefully with that expand revenues. This kind of entrepreneurial spirit has pushed me to further be able to develop a new venture, hopefully within the industry of finance coming later in my life.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's great. I'll tell you, there's no better experience if you want to jump into finance than actually starting and running a small business. It doesn't need to be fancy. Even just a two dudes and a pressure washer is enough to start to learn about a P&L, right? To start to learn about the balance sheet and cash flow, right? You got to get cash from your clients. You can't pay your bills without cash. I mean, those are lessons that a lot of people don't realize. When they just study books, and then they go into interviews and they know the answers to the questions because they remember them. But that's very different than understanding them on a physical level that you likely have looking at the bank account um, but it's good. I bet you get payment from your customers when you finish the job that day, I'm guessing.
Before and after, we take a
Before
little,
you,
we take a little deposit fee to ensure that we can pay some of our employments and equipment, because we have had people skimp out on us following.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Whew. All right. Again, that's fantastic. So, okay, well, look, Colin, you've got some great questions here, and I love. I actually really like the focus on real estate. I mean, I can see you going in that direction long term. So that's pretty cool. So, the first question you've got here is like, what are some common exit paths for investment bankers, and maybe some different skills required for each? And I would also say skills required for different exit paths, yes, but also really it's more about motivation is what I would say first and foremost. Skills follow motivation. It's a lot easier to build skills doing something that you love, something you're interested in, something you're passionate about. So the most important thing is to test drive a lot of different things and figure out what you enjoy doing more. You're naturally going to build skills there, and you're naturally going to be successful going in that direction. Now, that's hard to find. The hardest part is figuring out what do I actually like, right? That's going to be way harder than actually building the skills. So that's something to think about. A lot of people they're too certification or too skills oriented, and they think, oh, I want that title, I get these skills, but then they get there and they're like, this sucks. So keep an eye out for that. But common exit paths, I mean, of course, let's not spend a ton of time talking about, but private equity is probably the most common exit paths in terms of like headlines. Does everyone exit investment banking and go into private equity? Definitely not. I think it's probably, if you were to make me guess, I would say somewhere if at the analyst level, you're probably looking at 50% to 75%, depending on the bank, something like that. Some people get out of banking and say, "Forget it, I'm going to wash cars," right? I'm going to go be a musician. That's not very many people do that. But other roles, I mean, so things that I've seen are going to be corp dev. So corporate development, being in a corporate, doing M&A, or advising on M&A, or doing maybe special research projects for the CFO. Depends on the size of the business. So if you're in a really large company, you go big public corporation, you might join a 3 to 5 person corporate development shop. So pretty lean team. Even in a $1 billion corporation, your corp dev is going to be pretty lean. Typically, it'd be unusual for them to have a big team. You're not going to have the same resources you do at the investment bank, to be clear. So corp dev is a great opportunity as you scale down. So the first way to think about it is size of the business. You could also do corporate finance at a publicly traded company. Again, thinking about the large companies first. There's a lot of opportunity in the middle market, and I think a lot of people overlook it. For example, if you're coming out, with a solid degree, you've got some great investment banking experience for say 3 years, you can really get into a middle market business and be the go-to for the CFO and be doing special projects for the CEO. When I was at Baird, I actually saw a gentleman who did that sort of role. I think they called him like the senior manager of corporate intelligence or something like that, but like he had like a weird title, but like basically he was a former investment banker that went to 511 Tactical, one of the deals that I was on. It's publicly announced back in whatever that was, 2016 or something. And he basically was like the right hand to the CFO and the CEO. He was working on their decks for their private equity owners. He was doing research. He was researching. He was doing analysis. He was analyzing margins. He was researching competitors. I mean, he really was doing this really broad swath, and it was a fantastic role to really grow him into a director level and eventually C-suite. And so you can really actually get a pretty rapid advancement opportunity if you get into the right middle market business. Now, it's got to be the right business. If you go too small, what you'll find is that there's not going to be enough room for you to grow, because the CFO, CEO, they don't tend to leave those jobs. They're not rotating through every other year like the investment banking analysts are. And so folks at the mid-level, there might not be as much turnover. So if you're in a company, say 50 people, that might be too small. But if you're a mid-market business that's say 300 or 500 people, they've got a good size finance and executive C-suite, could be a really great opportunity. So I think that's probably, you asked a little bit later about what's some lesser known exit opportunities. And I would say jumping into a right hand to the CFO in a middle market business. And the number of middle market businesses in this country is just astounding. There's thousands. I mean, pick a city. They're everywhere. Everywhere you look is one of those businesses. And I think that one's pretty underappreciated. Other than that, I mean, certainly there's other lesser known. I mean, at that point, you're kind of getting into the really white space. I mean, one of the beauties of investment banking is it's tough to get into. It's tough to do it when you're there. You build a lot of skills that are just core professional skills, right? Taking notes in meetings, following up, being thorough, being accurate, solving a math problem, solving a qualitative problem, putting something together in a deck and presenting it to someone, telling a story through numbers and pictures, doing open source research to get smart on an industry. These are skills that you're going to build over the course of years, and you'll find that they're extremely applicable for a wide variety of roles. So the biggest limiting factor, honestly, is you figuring out what you want to do next and then going hard at it, and use the same recruiting skills that you learned in investment banking recruiting to go find whatever that next step is. So that's one of the hidden skill you're learning through investment banking recruiting is the skill of finding a job, because finding jobs isn't easy and it takes a lot of work. And you'll find that it's your mid-career, it's not so different than the investment banking recruiting process at all, and that you got to talk to a lot of people. You've got to ask for a lot of advice, continue to network, tell people what your goal is, and ask for their advice and see where it goes. So what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, for me at least, When it came to networking with individuals in investment banking, I would say the biggest thing for me was taking away specifically the culture of their firm. And I would say the culture of their firm was really able to steer and guide me because they would be able to tell me specifically about individuals within the firm and where they were planning to exit, and also individuals that had already exited and kind of where they had gone to. And, hearing individuals go into industries like private equity, real estate, private equity, even business development on some lesser known sides was
Hmm.
extremely interesting and gave me the confidence that, you know, working within banking within those first 3 years does not necessarily need to be a sentence to banking for the rest of your career if an interest arises during that 3 years.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the strengths of the investment banking path is it's one of the most versatile starting points that you can really get because there's a lot of people who will talk to you. Um, you know, they'll talk to you because they know how challenging and how difficult it is that you did and all the skills that you learned and how broadly applicable they are. That's very different than pursuing something like equity research or sales and trading. That's actually much more narrow, and the skills you learn there still valuable, but not as broadly applicable. Not as broadly applicable because for the reasons that we've discussed. So um, you asked a really great question, Colin, on here about what are some of the most well, you asked how can I turn these superficial connections into a more meaningful, maybe more authentic relationship, maybe even mentorship, um, and maybe career opportunities down the road. But I'll just stick with that. Like, how I love that question though. How do you take what could just be a superficial conversation and just turn it into something that's more genuine? Um, and there's some key points that I'd love to cover on that because it's a question that I'm really glad you asked. Very few people ask that question. They're much more concerned about how do I get my response rate from 13% to 18.5%, right? That's more what they're worried about. And I do have a tip for you on that if you are concerned about that. But for this, so the first reach out parts and having that first conversation, right? There's probably not a lot that's going to be different there between, someone who's focused on the long term versus short term. But for the long term, the key is follow up. And number one, and giving. When I say giving, don't take. You want to give. All right. So what do I mean by giving? You're like, I don't have anything to give. What are you talking about, Ben? Like, yes, you do. You have lots to give. The easiest thing you can give is information, updates. So if you and I are talking today, so if you want to follow up with me, for example, just take since we're talking right now, what you should do is in, 2 months, a month or 2 months, follow up and say, hey, Ben, I really appreciate the conversation we had. The advice you gave me on, networking was really helpful. Because of your advice, I was able to, meet these 3 people, and that led to this internship. I just wanted to say thanks for your time, and that was really helpful to me. Bang. Just send that note. Did you ask for anything? Nope. But did you give me something? Yeah. You just made my day, right? You send that note to somebody to say that they had a 20, 30-minute conversation with a college student and that was actually helpful to them and it did actually make a difference, even though how small difference, that makes other people feel good. So you're giving. So do that and then follow up. And it does now, you could give again and hey, give another update. Hey, I just got an offer. I'm going to be starting at this firm. Really excited. Now, the secret is that doesn't have to be like a one-off personal note. Like you can copy and paste and write 30 of those in 10 minutes, right? Okay, so the more personal you make it, the better. But
Right.
what people really care about is the follow-up and that you cared enough to remember them, give them an update on where you landed. Even if you landed at a competitor, even better. Tell them, hey, I know we talked Morgan Stanley. I love Morgan Stanley, but I'm going to JP Morgan, really excited. Maybe we should grab lunch sometime. That's it. You give them an update. But the core here is that you're giving, not taking. And when you're giving, you're building trust.
Yeah.
When you're taking, you're eroding trust. It's a bank account. And when you do that, now if you send me 2 of those updates, hey, this advice was helpful. Hey, I landed this offer. Thanks for your help. And then you're to ask me later, like, hey, I've got a question for you, on this deal I saw you were on, and I just want to learn more about that. Can we talk about it? What do you think I'm going to say?
Yes.
I'm going to be like, absolutely, man. I'm going to cancel appointments to make sure I can take this call with Colin because of how thoughtful you've been.
Right.
And I want to return the favor to you. I feel indebted to you, right? Even though I was the person who helped you to begin with. So that's human nature. That's how you build that longer term relationship, because it's something that, it's one of these things. It's easy to say, it's hard to do. It takes a lot of effort and discipline to follow up in that way. And you're not going to do it with everybody. It's not, let's say you talk to 100 people, you're not going to build a close personal relationship with 100 people, but pick your short list. But you really do need 20 people that you really gelled with, that you found something in common with, that for whatever reason you felt like you had an initial connection that you wanted to keep and hold on to. Have that short list of maybe 20, and over the course of a couple years and maybe a couple decades, that list should be maybe more like 150 to 200. And there's like an old adage that basically everyone, can't, it's really hard to have more than 200 actual relationships. That's about the human capability. And so if you think about it like that, you're starting to build out that list of 200. You're going to meet a lot of folks at college, right, that are going to stay on that list of 200. That includes your friends, your family, high school, college, work, everything. And you're probably going to want 20, 30 of those 200 to be, that early career path. Now that list will change. People will drop off. People will be added. But that's a really great question. And the key is in the follow-up. Give. And when I say give, I just mean give them updates. Tell them how their information was helpful. Tell them what you're up to. And don't ask for anything. Right? Even if you want something. If you want something, then email them 2 weeks before you ask. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, hey, just want to say that advice was really helpful. Would love to be in touch down the road. Here's what I got out of it. Here's what I learned. Here's how it helped me. And, connect soon. They're going to write back with like, oh, thanks, Colin. That's awesome. Best of luck. That's it. Now that you just made their day, but you were really thinking, crap, I want to ask them for a follow-up conversation. Then 2 weeks later, a tactic to get that follow-up conversation, maybe a little sooner, is you've got to frame it as some particular impetus, meaning something happened and you're responding to that thing happening, and part of you responding to that thing happening is you reaching out to them. So, example, if you just found out, I'll just give you a basic example, is you're interviewing you just found out you're going to interview at Barclays, right? Let's just say in Chicago. Okay, I interviewed at Barclays in Chicago. You're going to interview at Barclays in Chicago, and you talk to 3 different bankers at Barclays in Chicago. Reach out to one or two of them and say, "Hey, I just got scheduled for a first round interview in 2 weeks. I'd love to chat with you and practice some of my questions," or something like that. I don't know. That could be a little weird. Or the other way to do it, actually, let me rephrase that. A better way to do it would be to reach out to someone at a different firm who you really gelled with. Like, hey, I just got my first set of interviews. I'd love to chat with you and fine tune some of my why banking and why why this career path type of question. But the point is that you saw something changed. You just got scheduled for a bunch of interviews, and you were leveraging them to help with that change. So that's how to get that second call. There's got to be, my point in saying that, there's got to be a reason. It can't just be like, hey, I'd love to follow up and chat again. Like, about what? Like, what's the point? Like, why are you wasting my time? A lot of people do that without giving first. Yeah. And then they don't have high close rates. They don't have a lot of success with it. It kind of feels awkward, and that's why.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. What else? Good question, though. So you've also asked, what are some of the most effective ways to reach out? I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. Obviously, you can do the direct messaging stuff. If you're going to reach out to someone with a connection, put a message in it. I like those messages because they're very short. You do not have a lot of characters. That's a good thing. They'll actually read it. Um, Most people who write emails and they send these introductory emails, they're like 5 paragraphs long, and they say, "Can you spend 5 minutes of your time and talk to me?" They put that at the bottom of paragraph 5. No one gets down that far, so they don't even know what you're asking. So don't do that. That's how not to reach out. But don't underestimate the people that are already in your network. Um, you have parents, you have uncles, you have grandparents, aunts, cousins. That's just family. You've got family friends. You've got high school friends. They have parents and uncles and grandparents. Like, you actually have a pretty good network before even starting to think about networking. Tap into it. A lot of people they're trying to hit a hole in one when you should be trying to play it like a par 4. All right. Like, you don't have to know the perfect person. People are like, "Oh, well, I don't know the CEO of Goldman Sachs, so I don't know anybody." Like, okay, but nobody knows the CEO of Goldman Sachs. That's not what you're looking for. But I guarantee you, you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who's a managing director at an investment bank. I guarantee you do. So again, think about, you're trying to hit it. You're trying to hit the hole in 4 shots, not in 1 shot. And so if you know your uncle who used to be in finance, and maybe you were wrong, you just thought that he was and he actually wasn't, but you talk to your uncle anyway, be like, "Hey, Uncle Randy, I thought you were in finance." He's like, "No, what'd you hear that for? You're crazy. Here's what I did do, though." He's like, "I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that." "Okay, well, do you know anyone, who was involved in this or that?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm not really sure, but I know somebody who might know." And then bang, they introduce you to Tommy, and Randy introduced you to Tommy, and Tommy's like, he's a little bit closer, and he's still not quite what you're looking for. But then Tommy's going to introduce you to somebody. The point is, you can see when you do that 3 times, you're going to find somebody who's very relevant, and it's just about persistence. So that's the most effective way to reach out, is start close to home, let them introduce you to other people. You're a detective following up on leads. You got to start with the crime scene you're already on. You're not going to find the person who's 2 towns away, right, in the first 10 minutes, right? You've got to follow up on leads. You've got to check the surveillance footage, so forth. I'm teasing, but the detective analogy is very apt, because you get a lead, you follow up on it. Don't let that trail run cold. Find a way to get that follow-on conversation, get that follow-on introduction. All right, but Colin, you were telling me before that you had taken Adventus and gotten your level 1 certification. Tell us a little bit more about that. How have you found that has impacted you in terms of your studies or in terms of your internship opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd like to say, firstly, it just taught me how to look at financial statements in general and what a financial statement should look like. I had my financial statements that I personally kept for the business, but I'm no CPA. So it was really nice to see what an actual structured, what the 3 financial statements look like actually structured, and being able to run through a 10-step model, because I hadn't actually seen a lot of that information on an Excel spreadsheet up until that moment. So that was extremely helpful off the bat, and venturing into my internship that I'm currently in with Calder Capital, an investment banking firm out of Grand Rapids. It was really able to help. It helped me massively, because when I started looking at these assignments initially, although maybe some of the fundamental investment banking terminologies and what they meant weren't there, but that's a learning curve of once you get into the firm. But what was there was my Excel prowess and being able to get through the assignments that I did understand at the beginning quickly. And then once I was able to learn more about what I needed to know within the statements and what they meant, I was actually able just to finish these high level assignments much faster. So I would say that it was really impactful for my internship, and now I'm able to reach out to the associate I'm working under and take on more work even some moments, just because I'm able to finish assignments quicker. I would say it's been really beneficial in that way, and also just networking wise, the videos I watched before even jumping into the model. Kind of learning more about outreach, shortening my emails was big, because, like you mentioned, with 5 paragraphs, I had like 3. And then at the bottom, I would say a few times that worked. And I'm sure you're right that half the people didn't even make it to the times. So shortening that up into almost less than 1 paragraph is doable. Just, "This is who I am. This is what I'd like from you. Do you have any time at these moments?" And the response rate is shot through the roof. So being able to grab stuff like that from Adventus has been pivotal.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that story. Yeah, I think you said it really well in that Adventus is going to help you with the muscle memory of the keystrokes, familiarity with Excel, which makes it so much easier just to learn the finesse of the terminology in your particular industry or your particular group or how your managing director wants you to do things.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. No, I appreciate that. Um, it's certainly really powerful. So what else? We've talked about we've talked about you being an entrepreneur yourself with the power washing and kind of property services business. We've talked a little bit about exit paths, how to turn those casual connections into more meaningful ones, and then of course your experience with Adventus. But what else is on your mind? I see you got a few more questions here. If we were to focus in only on one or two more areas, what else is on your mind?
Yeah, I'd say for me, something that's really applicable right now is I was really nervous getting into the professional environment for the first time, how I would fare. As I've gotten into it, I feel like I've been able to grab some skills that are good to maintain in the professional environment, but I'm still searching for what are some really good things you can do well in that junior level position, intern wise, to prompt yourself, whether that's a return offer or at least just to have a positive sense of you amongst your coworkers.
So it's how to get the return offer.
Most basically, to shorten it.
Um, well, look, I mean, whether or not you take the job is a different question. But ultimately, if you want to build trust and respect, you got to build trust and respect, and that's how you get the return offer. And then you decide if that's what you want, if that's for you, right? So that's why I emphasize I've got kids who are in college, and I emphasize to them, like, don't worry about it if you want the job or not. Go apply, go work hard, go try to get it. Because if you don't get the offer, then you don't have a chance. So at least go get the offer, and then then you decide, and the power and the option is in your hands. Look, the key things, I emphasize a lot about risk management, meaning your goal is to lower your risk, de-risk yourself in the eyes of your employer. Now, up to that point, they've hired you on as an intern, so you've de-risked yourself to a certain level. But hiring you as an internship is relatively low risk for them, because if you don't work out, they say bye after 10 weeks and they never see you again. And they don't have to worry about severance packages and all that kind of stuff. But when you come on full time, they do. And so there is an elevated level of risk that the employer is concerned about when bringing someone on full time. The most important thing at that point, you've proven your technicals. I mean, you got to have the technicals. Foundationally, you've got to have the technicals. You don't have to be in the top 1%, but you've got to have a strong foundation. So presuming that you have that, because that's what I call price of admission, right? That just gets you in the door. But when you're in the door and in the building, a couple of the key things you got to do are, when you're going to be in two types of meetings most of the time. There's exceptions, but just most of your meetings are going to fit into two types. You're either going to be a big meeting with lots of people, or you're going to be in a small meeting with not very many people. When you're in a big meeting with lots of people, take notes ferociously and don't say anything unless they specifically tell you to talk about something specific that they've already talked to you about, most likely, or that you already own and that you're responsible for that one little thing. But probably not. As an intern, you probably just need to shut up and don't say anything. If it's a big meeting now, big meeting is like 8 people or 12 people or something, right? Something around that size. But you're going to take as many notes as possible. Try to understand as much as you possibly can. Balance listening with taking notes, but don't just sit there, like you're, at lecture, in economics, and you can barely stay awake, right? That's the worst thing you can do. Take notes, because the best thing that you can do is then after the big meeting, usually there's a small meeting, right? And in the small meeting, there's probably, at least 2 people, otherwise it's not a meeting, but probably 2 to 4, right? Something like that. And it's your tighter team where now you can speak more freely. They can say, hey, Colin, like, what did you get out of that meeting? What did you hear? And you'll have something to say because you took really good notes. Also, they're going to be talking about facts and figures and specifics. And, the MD asked you to do this from this page to that page and use this rate instead of that rate. And what if they're wrong? and you have the note correctly. Like, actually, I thought they said 5.7%, not 5.9%. Bang. Like, whoa, you just added value because you caught a note that there was a mistake that would have happened if it wasn't there for you. And you wasn't because you were a genius. It's just because you were taking notes and you were thoughtful and you were listening. If you can do things like that, you're going to stand out in the right ways. So that's level 1. Level 2 is going to be when you're in that smaller meeting, they're going to be talking about getting stuff done, action items, who's responsible for what, how are we going to break this project up, right, and move forward with it. You need to find ways to help. Too many people are passive and they sit around and wait and they say, oh, well, the senior analyst or the associate or the VP, they know everything and they're going to know how I can help. So I'm going to sit quietly like a little mouse and wait for them to ask me to do something. Negative. All right. That's the way to get passed over. What you want to do instead is you want to be listening to them as them talking about the things that have to get done. And you raise your hand and say, oh, I can help with that. Oh, I know how to do part of that. I can do this part. Is that helpful? I can do the beginning. I can do the research. I can pull this together, pull that together. Will that be helpful? Will that save you time? All right. You've shown that enthusiasm by listening and offering ways to help, because the hidden value is the hidden wisdom is that your senior analyst or associate, they don't know you. They don't know what you can do. Maybe they know some things, but they certainly don't know everything you can do. But you do. So it's on you to tell them what you can do, right? This is beyond the job description. What you'll find is that you might have 5 people hired for the same internship job. They have the same title, the same qualifications, but they all have different skills, right? The hiring manager or the senior associate, senior analyst, they don't know who's who. They don't know if maybe you have more experience with Cap IQ because of the stock pitch group that you were on, or maybe you were in, maybe you've run your own business and you know more about a P&L. But the point is that you have unique skills that they're not aware of. You have to go in and find a way to raise your hand and say, I can take that on. And then you got to follow through. Of course, that's the obvious part. But that's the way you're going to stand out in the right ways, because you're taking stress off of other people on your team, right? You're taking the workload, you're putting load on your shoulders, which is taking it off of other people's shoulders, and your team is going to run better. And when your team runs better that you're on, you're going to look good, you're going to feel good, you're going to build trust, you're going to build respect, and you're going to be in demand. People are going to say, that Colin dude was awesome. I want him on he's going to be on the next team, right? Right, staffer? Hey, staffer over there. Like, you better put Colin on my team. And if you can get that, someone says that one time in 10 weeks, offer's done. It's a done deal.
Absolutely.
All right. Does that help?
Yeah, no, most definitely.
Cool. Yeah. I think that, I think some of that stuff is obvious, but again, you've got to listening to it and doing it are very different things. But I can't tell you how important it is just to step up and ask to take something on. And let me say it another way. You'll know you're succeeding when they tell you no. You know what I'm saying? So if they say, no, Colin, nope, you got enough. Then that's success. All right. If no one's ever told you no, then you haven't offered enough. All right. Because again, you don't want to be foolhardy, but you do want to be aggressive and be more on the leading edge and asking for a little bit more. So, cool. All right. What else? Any last things in your mind before we wrap up?
Sure, yeah, just a brief question. You mentioned like when you reach back out, offering them something, whether that's like an update, I just landed this position and whatnot. I had heard some other individuals tell me, maybe sending them an article you thought of or congratulating them on a closed deal or whatnot. What are some other ways that you can reach back out to individuals if maybe you didn't just land an internship? It might be old news or whatever the case.
Right. If you don't have a personal update, yeah. So there's a couple techniques. I mean, definitely something like mentioning somebody that they know. Oh, I just talked to so and so, and you kind of got introduced to that person. If they do have a deal close in the news, great time. Great time, right? Any or a promotion, that's why LinkedIn is a really great tool, because people, you'll see, it'll show, oh, so and so was promoted to senior analyst. Bang, great opportunity to reach out to them. Um, I do agree. Now, the drawback of doing that is you're with the crowd, right? You're doing what everybody else is doing. That's not a bad thing, but it just means that you'll stand out less. And so what I would do is, instead of just hitting like, hey, thumbs up, to your promotion announcement, like, maybe write a comment or write them a DM, you know, and write them a paragraph like, hey, congrats, that's really well earned. I really appreciate how you helped me along in my journey. I know you're going to crush it at the next level. Let me know if I can do anything to help. I don't know, something like that. But like, you just write an actual friendly message that's a 3 sentences, that mentions something unique or something quasi personal about that they helped you with. That's going to have a lot more impact, and you're going to stand head and shoulders above. You're just going to stand out for the right way. And again, you're going to build. You're going to continue to build trust and with that person because of how you reached out. But again, the drawback is it's like something that a lot of people are reaching out to. Whereas if you're in the lead and you're giving an announcement and it's about you, then you're sending it out to 30 people. Nobody else is sending them that same email. So immediately you're standing out. Um, but again, it's not me, me, me. It's about you thanking them for their help in getting
Right.
you to where you are, right? So it is really about you, but you're making it about them, right? So, yeah, what else? I mean, what are some other things? I mean, yeah, it could be a deal. I mean, I definitely have seen that. If you have someone in private equity, it's a little bit easier because they'll post like, "Oh, we just closed this transaction." Always say congrats. If anyone says, "Hey, I just finished this deal. We just did the closing dinner. We just closed on this." If someone says, "We just closed on this," your next word needs to be congratulations. All right, just that's universal, always the right answer. And whenever you're congratulating somebody, that's an opportunity to reach out, right? So just think about what are the reasons you might congratulate somebody. Um, Always, that's an opportunity to reach out. But it's not that hard. You can manufacture reasons. I guess you said send an article. I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings on that. I mean, if you had a really engaging conversation about, I don't know, like some really specific conversation about real estate and what some of the unique metrics in real estate that they have. I don't know what all of them are. I know real estate has a lot of different metrics that are unique. And you guys had a really in-depth conversation about it, and then you saw a really intriguing article about something that related to really specifically to what you guys talked about. Sure, send it over. You know, I don't. There's definitely nothing wrong with that, but I don't view that as that's you giving. I mean, it's still giving, right? You're kind of doing some research, putting something together, sharing it with them. So you're giving them something, but you're also giving them a homework assignment, right? You're giving them, okay, well, make sure you read your 5 paragraph article, and I'll be following up with you to make sure you read. I mean, you're not saying that, but like, you know, are they really going to read it? I don't know. So I'm not as big of a fan of that. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that should be more sparingly. You should do it when it's really relevant. Don't do it with the 30 people. Oh, I found one article that I really liked and I just blasted it to 30 people. That's going to come across as a little disingenuous. It might actually erode trust. So, again, if you do that, I would recommend that it be very tightly related to a very specific conversation that you had. Then go for it. Then it's, absolutely go for it. Um, but if it's about you and you thanking them, you can send out 30 emails. Again, it shouldn't be the same. You should put something unique in the email. Like, hey, when we talked about this, when you mentioned this, when you introduced me to so-and-so, you just put one little half of a sentence. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but half of a sentence should be unique to them. That's going to stand out in the right ways. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure you need too many more reasons to reach out.
I don't think so.
I think it's a good question, though. Um, let's see. Yeah. Um, You know. All right. Anything else?
That was what we covered most all I was thinking about.
Cool. All right, Colin. Well, hey, look, it was great to connect, great to chat. Congrats again on starting your own business, and best of luck as you look to unwind that and move on to the new career. I can't recommend enough. You can't go back in time. Most people, they're already, sophomores, juniors in college. They can't go back and start a business 2 years ago. So it doesn't work out for a lot of folks. But there's no better way than to learn about business, and don't be afraid of telling that story. You should. That should be one of the key stories that people remember about you. When you're in interviews, I want the interviewer after the interview to be saying, "Oh yeah, remember the kid who started his own power washing business? Wow, that was really cool." Like, you want them to be saying that because that's what they're going to be saying, especially about how you worked hard and grew it through pounding the pavement, right? Knocking on doors. Like, that's cool. So,
Thank you.
all right. Okay. Well, this has been here with Colin. This is Ben Dowell, your friendly Adventist advisor with respect to recruiting, and we'll catch you guys next time.